there, Sam with you here, a Friday mid-morning. What are we, February 16th? And since it's Friday, as we have been prone to do of late, going into the weekend, thought I would do just a quick update on Bitcoin. Now, we do have two counts here that could be in play, and unfortunately, we can't really count one out over the other. They both potentially could play out. From an Elliott basis, technically, that nothing has been invalidated. We can see now this. I've got the bullish count up here. It would appear that the bulls are trying to really take over here and push this bullish count here. Now it's hard to make a call here. I get asked all the time, well, where are we with Bitcoin? What's the count? What are you leaning towards? It's I'm a bull, right? So I'm rooting for the bullish count, but as a technician, I can't rule out the bearish count just yet. I'm dying to. I just can't do it yet. So if we look at let's just break them down. And there's since I last did a Bitcoin, since last Friday, or actually I think I did it on Monday as well. We're trying to get impulsive here. All right. So in the bullish count, we have to make the assumption that we have a 1, 2, here's the 3, and then we get this extended fifth with this excellent subdivision here into the fifth, right? So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And it's very technical. So as I've shown this before, if we look at where the algos would be trading, they worked just from the swing low here. So we went right to the golden zone, down. We come back. Yeah, we get through it here. So it's a little sloppy at this end, but for whatever reason, and I can't tell you why, but for whatever reason, they stayed with that swing. Because here's how we can tell, because here's the first target, here's the second target. So they made theirs, right? So here's the first reaction. It's not enough. We come back, we get their second target right in conjunction with the lower parallel. Boom. Now we're trying to work off of that and go impulsive. But what has made it so difficult is the shallowness of the retracements. So if you're an Elliott wave trader and you're trying to get a count on here that can work, and the idea is to put an Elliott count on it that is consistent with the rule set, so you can try and organize where you are and then take advantage of the potential forecasting that Elliott wave can offer to you. But we're just not there yet. So if we look now, if this is our low, then the deepest retracement, we can kind of back into this count. The deepest retracement we get is right here. So we would have to make the assumption that we had a 1, 2. So I'm on the 4-hour here, and this is, I should have mentioned, this is on Bitstamp. But so let me go down to a 1 hour, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So there's some sort of, it's very ugly, and we are gonna go down to the 15-minute just to have a look at it, right? So for Elliott academics, there's a real challenge in there. But if I take this off, all right, so just working backwards, we can look at this as likely the second. If this is going to unfold in this direction, we'd have to work on the assumption that we had some sort of a leading diagonal into the 1 wave. All right, so we'd be topping here for the 1. So we get a shallow 2. That's 38. Now, we know it's low percentage. Approximately 12% of wave 2s only go to the 38. So it's that was the question mark, and it continues to be part of the difficulty of getting a hard count on this that you can really lean into. This is just an absolute mess from an Elliott perspective, because you have a lot of conflict here in terms of where your third is. I think I do have a count on it that works, but it was not easy. It took a lot of trial and error to find a count that fits. But if we're just going to play off the bullish side, and sometimes the idea is maybe just try and simplify. All right, so trying to get every little wiggle and nuance and put a wave count on it can be, it's an intellectual challenge, but is it making you money? I mean, is it helping you? I mean, you can make the case that it's making you a better technician by going through the rigor of getting a count on this that fits all of the criterion. But sometimes, when you're fighting it, it's better to just step back and simplify. Okay, where's the deepest retracement? Okay, there it is. So I can work on the assumption that I've got a 1, 2. Well, if that's my 2, well, I'm just trying to get a handle on whether I've got an impulsive wave on my hands for a third. Right? And we can measure to try and get a handle on it, just based off of those probabilities. So if I've got a 1, 2, my anticipation is that I've got a potential for a third up here that would be consistent with prior wave 3. So we can simply look at this, and as I've shown you before, we know the negative 100 is going to be fairly close to the 1618. Now, because of the shallowness of the 2, it's going to be a little further away, and I'll show you that. So when it's right on it is when you get the 618 on the retracement. When we go this shallow, we're going to have some distance. All right, so here's the negative 100. Here's the high probability zone for that third. So this is up at, we'll call it 13,000. So can we get there based on what we're seeing here? You know, maybe a stretch, right? We would need a real extension in that third, or this is going to need to be relabeled again. But we can see if that's a 2, right? And you know, we're kind of trying to get a handle on where the algorithms are. You know, if it's a front run on the 38 here, they've already hit their first target. Here's the second one. So right now we're trying to qualify this as a third here in green, right? We would need to qualify this as a third. We'd need to get to 100% of the length of the 1. Right? So we had a pretty steep 1, shallow 2, trying to get to 100% so we can qualify it as a potential third, right? So then you know, if we get it, then we'd be looking for 3, 4. You know, it would mean relative to where this tops that we'd have that the 3 wave here would potentially be, you know, somewhat shallow relative to where you would expect it under more normal trading conditions. So, or normal Elliott pattern. Let me put it that way, right? It's not that it's abnormal trading conditions. I misspoke there. Let's call it where you would anticipate a third likely topping. And we could eventually get there. This could be a 1-2, 1-2. That's possible. So, but you know, I want to know that that's there. But this is the first mile marker I want to get to relative to the where the algos are playing. I want to at least get to the negative 618, which is overlapping the 100 here. So how can we get there? Can I see subdivision here? Well, as a matter of fact, I can see beautiful subdivision here. So in just trying to simplify, I can get a good 1 here. I've got a nice 3 wave 2, right? We know it's shallow, but it still plays. Let me tighten that up a little bit. And then coming off of that, if I just bring it in a little bit so you can see it better. So I got a 5 wave 1, just what I'd anticipate. If that's going to be a 2, I've got exactly what I would anticipate. I've got a 5 wave 1. Here's I get a little A, B, C into my 2. Then I got a little squiggle, you know, you force in there. It's the deepest retracement, so I would play this as a 1-2. If I went down to the 15-minute, there's a little diagonal in there as a 1. There's my big 3, shallow 4. Yet again, it's shallow. So since we've got some of this marked, let me declutter the chart and take some of this off. We're already to and through that algo target. So if I'm trying to get a handle on this, if this is my 2, well, let's check this one. So if this is my 3 here. Right, 3, very shallow. There's the 23. So we know between the 23 and the 38 in a strong market, high probability zone for a fourth. Right, we know that's right by the book. So if we know here, look where it goes, right to the algo target here. So you say, but that's an algo target that they would be running off of the 50. Well, you're right. You're right. So is it a front run? Are they working off of something else? You know, you try and get a handle on why would it pivot there. What do we got? We got 10,311, 322, excuse me. So why would we pivot there? Well, we might have to dig a little deeper and look at other swings to get a handle on why we might be pivoting there. But if I just look here, this certainly plays as a potentially completed third wave. Right, 1-2, 1-2, nice subdivision into my third, and I have a technical pivot on the high. Could that play? All right, that could definitely play from an Elliott perspective. So if I put that as my top here, now I'm going to go back to the 2 that I think we're working off of, because remember I've got 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. Right, so back to in white here. Now I'm going to pull from that 2 to potentially what may be a completed third. Don't know yet until I get a 4. But right now that's playing as a completed third. We got a technical pivot as I just showed you. So what are we looking for here? Can we get a nice A, B, C down here to set us up for the fourth? That would be the next trade. Now, there's not a lot of upside on that. I can't even find my 5. Here it is. Not a lot of upside on that. You know, unless we get an extension in the 5th. But relative to what we're seeing here, if we look at the 1, 2, 3, you know, I would do it this way. You'd look for the high probability zones for a 5th. So if I take my alternate tool here and I work from my 1 and I project, let's use the 38 as a projection for the 4, right? Now I'm hypothetical. So, I've got an algo target here at exactly 100% the length of the 1. So this would be a likely candidate for my 5th. Again, hypothetical, if we get a little ABC down here for a 4, that's a reasonable target. So is that enough? Is that enough to take a trade, to risk it? So you're buying at call it 95.80, trying to get to 10.760. Your call. You'd have to put a stop. You got this pivot here that's potentially going to offer some support. So my view is there's not enough meat in that trade, because you'd really have to put your stop under the 65, because you've got this pivot and you've got this pivot here you're dealing with. There's the one that matters, just under the 65. Not enough meat in that for me to take that trade. But if I can get this to complete up here, then potentially I've got a 1, 2, 3. Then I'm looking for this 4. Right, so that brings the 3 way down here, right? And again, this is all hypothetical. You're just laying out a possible roadmap. So if I get a pivot up here for a potential 5th, now this, if I'm playing for this 4 up to this 5, now that gets a little meatier. There's more upside if I'm using a reasonable target, again, just working off of probabilities relative to those swing relationships. If I can get a 4 in here, that's got much better juice in it. So I can just eyeballing it here. So if we get up to the 2618, and somewhere between the 23 and the 38, I get a 4 here relative to this. So it would be, again, this is all hypothetical, but a potential roadmap. If I can get that to set up, then this is a tradable event right here. And this would be confirming the bullish count. Right? Because if we now step back here, this established here. So this also interesting here, we get the 618 of the length of the 1. Right? So can we get a little ABC down here for the 4th? So to put the full roadmap together, we're looking for this. Can we get that? 3, 4, 5. That would be just Elliott perfect. Right? Perfect doesn't always happen, but that's the roadmap that I would be operating from, looking for the bullish side of this to play out. Now, I'm a bull, so I'm hoping this is what we see. Would I trade this? Sure, but I wouldn't. This, no. This, yes. Yeah, there's enough upside there, and this would confirm for me that I'm now in an impulsive wave count here, where I've got a 1, 2, albeit the shallow 2, 3, 4. That's the tradable event right there. Now let's step back and see maybe why we can get a handle on why we're hitting that resistance there. Well, so again, just considering what the algorithms are likely to be doing here, they're going to work off of these major pivots. We know that. So I would just start checking them. Go, okay, why is it stopping here? So I'm going to take that off just to declutter the chart. And I'm going to take this off as well, because we've got an established, a potential roadmap that we'd like to see. So if I just start checking these pivots, looking for some confluence zone, I'm just going to take the straight retracement tool. I'm just going to go swing high to swing low. What do I get there? All right, dominant pivot here. Here's my swing low. I literally have ticked the 618. So that's coming back to, one, you got to know why it's pivoting there, where the algos are likely working. So that doesn't surprise me at all. It blew right through the 50, carved it up. Here was some potential structural resistance, blew right through it, came back to test it, to tap it and check it. That's the little sell-off here. Checks it, then up it goes. So now we've got this resistance here sitting. So you see how we have kind of a confluence between long and short? So from this swing high to that swing low, you could make a case that all we've done is an ABC. That's the bearish count, right, which we're going to look at in a second. So how do we know? Well, we're not going to know. That's the problem with Bitcoin right now until we get this leg. Do we get the 4 that goes into the 5 to cap us with a 3 and break the 65 here? That would be the tell that the bullish count is taking over. But so far, this is why I told you when we started, we can't confirm it. All we've done is hit a perfectly technical pivot, which would set up this. Sets that up. So how do what do you do, right? So you got to take a calculated risk right here. You got to play the 4 on the anticipation that bull's going to win the day, Right? It's a battle here. Can we get a little retest down here, get that 4, and blow through the 65? If we get through the 65, then the algos switch. Right? That doesn't mean that they flip and go long here. That means that they take the next 50, right, on this degree here at this hourly. So if we get through that, right, then they're setting up for the next 50. So, are they working off this pivot or this pivot? Well, you'd want to check both. So if they get through, then we're going to start measuring here because we're just trying to get a handle on what they're likely doing. So we would pull from, I'd go back to the next major pivot, which is my 2 here. We get through it, there's that, and then that sets up here. Do you see what happens here? So if we work off of this, so potentially, right, we get the combination of an Elliott pattern 4 relative to the bull count with just a straight algo pull from swing low to swing high setting up at the 50. Do you see how that sets us up? So you get a confluence of, this is just a good example of what I often try and show you, is that what I'm teaching you is a combination of Elliott wave with swing trading relative to what the algorithms are written to do. Right? Not every algorithm, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's this group of traders that have written algorithms that follow this particular pattern. And you see it in every asset class. I don't care what time frame, I don't care what you're looking at. Experiment with it. You'll see it all over the place, right? So the tell is not, as I've shown you many times, is not the 618 or the 50 or the 38. That's not the tell that algos are in. The tell is what happens at the target. That's how you know. It's what happens at the negative 23.6 and the negative 618. That's how you confirm that they're in the game. Well, sitting here in Bitcoin, I don't think there's much question about whether they're in the game. We saw them hit perfect targets here on the way down. So we know they're in, right? So now we're just trying to figure out what they're doing and tuck in behind them. Right? And can we use the Elliott wave to get in and then reduce the risk? Can we use that wave pattern to say, well, I think they might be doing this, but that fits in with my nice wave 4, which gives me a potential 5 here into my 3. Right? That's all we're trying to do. Can we get in behind what they're likely to do? Because we can't just take every 50. Right? Pockets have to be too deep. So let's zoom in here. Now, what does that look like? If this is a 3, right? We look just literally, right? It's a slight front run off the 618. Exactly what you would expect them to do. So what does that look like? Could this possibly be an A, B, C down into the 50? Would that make sense? Right? Do you see how you're just trying to line the whole thing up? That's all. That's the best you can hope for. If you're a swing trader in here, that's the best you can do. Can you line up a trade? Absolutely nothing says it must pivot there. It could easily just go down here. So that's why you always trade with a stop. So where's the invalidation point of that count? It's right here, right? Because we're trying to catch this as a third wave, right? 1, 2, we can't overlap the 1. Now we don't have an impulse. We go to a diagonal. Different scenario. If we get an impulse, if we get a diagonal here, that leans us now more towards the bearish count because that would imply an ending diagonal, more common in a C wave. Right? It wouldn't play. It wouldn't play in this with this roadmap as a 1, 2, 3. That doesn't fit the Elliott count. We couldn't have a diagonal here. So here's your invalidation point for bulls. And note, you wonder, is it a coincidence that we're just on the other side of the 65, right where the algos would flip? Coincidence? You tell me. Well, so there we look at that and say there's your potential roadmap. We know what the risk downside is. We know we still can't be definitive about it, but we have a potential play setting up here to confirm the bullish count, and we have an invalidation point for that. So there you go. That's the best I can offer you. Now, just as I said I would do it, let's go look at the bearish count. Right. So if you look here, now here's the where the bears are looking at this. They're going, well, man, this is exactly what I was expecting. So in the bearish count, rather than 1, 2, 3, this plays as a 1, 2. Here's the big move down here for the 3. Now, just to make note of it here. Notice that, right? So this might give you some, lean you towards the bullish count. Note here that this is steeper than this. Right? So if you're thinking it's a third wave, your anticipation would be that the oscillator here, the depth of this, the Elliott oscillator, would be deeper in the third. But that's not what we. Not, it's not always. It's not mandatory. This could still well be the count. But that's kind of interesting here. So not only that, if this is the third here within this count, if this is the third, we don't have divergence here in the fifth. Interesting, right? So this would lean you towards the bullish count that this was our third, right? Because of the strength of the oscillator. So what do we get? Actually, what we get here is divergence between the 1 and the 3. So if I just to draw it so you can see what I'm talking about. You see that? So I got lower prices here, but I do not have a new low in the oscillator. Just something to take note of, right, as we try and figure out where we are. Now, one thing we have to recognize here, excuse me, as we look at the bearish count, yes, I'm pulling from the 2, but since the 4 here has overlapped this as my potential 1, we got to pull all the way back. Right, because then you got to check both now that we're in. If this is going to play the bearish count, here's our 5 down here with our algo target. If that's going to play, right, and we're heading down to get that algo target off of this 618, which I promise you, there are algorithms that sold it there with that target, right? In the code, that's what they're targeting as the fifth. So that would play into the bearish count. What's that? That's what are we at? 4,200. So since it's a diagonal. We want to note that we're sitting right here from the 2. We want to note that we're sitting right at the 618. But we have to add to that the pull from the beginning of it, from the high, in this case, of the 1 down to the 3. Well, what do we get here? Now we get a little confluence. Because what have we just tapped? That's the 38. So from the start of the count, of the proposed bearish count, from the start of the 1 wave to the low of the 3rd wave, we've got a little confluence zone here where we've tapped the 38 and the 618. They're almost on top of each other. Observation. That's what, yet again, I tell you, I'm sorry I can't confirm this count for you, but you can see why I've got this box drawn down here, because I've got a big hot box down here of algo targets down here screaming for that C to get reached. Now, how do we know, right? So just as I was showing you, we really can't completely eliminate this count until we get on the other side of that 65. That's the, okay, we're home free. We're out of the woods here. This is, we'll just call it the V bottom, right? That's what it would be, right? They happen, right? We saw one here. Look at, boom, V bottom, V bottom, V bottom. That would absolutely confirm it. That now we would know that the bear count was off the table when we get on the other side of that 65. What's that? 13.4. We can get, at least on Bitstamp, we can get that. If we can get that, then we're looking good. Right now, it's just hitting the very predictable resistance is being hit now. That's all that's happening. So if we get through it, right? It's not party time, right? We all next week up we got the 50. We've got the outside parallel here. We can't celebrate just yet, right? So you might have those two, different if you had quadrants on your in your trading view, bullish count, bearish count, and I'd have different major swings there to play with. Right, just last thing. How am I doing on time? Oh, I'm running long. Okay, let's. This is the last thing I had. I've switched over here because I've got members that are like to day trade in Bitcoin here, and they're on Bitfinex. So I've got Bitcoin to the dollar in Bitfinex. Now this, I would tell you that this is the best count I can come up with here. This was very difficult to get a workable count. In fact, I had it wrong a couple of times. The best I can get here, so this is where it's problematic here because of the length of these swings. So the best I can come up with here is that we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4 in white here, and that we get a truncated fifth for our 1 wave. That's the best count I can get. So we have a diagonal, right? So here's the 4 overlapping the 1, which implies the 3 wave into the 3rd. So 1, 2, A, B, C into the 3rd. Deep 4. It's technical. Right, so if we look at it compared to the 4, or pardon me, to the 2, so we look at the length of the 3, and we come down here. Well, we go right to the 786 to the tick. Boom, boom. Now we're already at the second algo target. Right, so here a little stutter step at what would have been the algo target. But then you look again and you say, well, wait a minute, what are the algos doing? So I got to look from here, potentially. I look here. And that's kind of interesting. So look here, we front run by a couple of ticks on the 2. Right, so from this as the 4, because what we want to do on the larger degree, you want to go 1, 2. But if you're strict with the Elliott wave count, it doesn't play. You can't make that fit. I tried 100 times. There's no way to get that to fit. You want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can't do it. Third is the shortest wave. It's just, pardon me, if you had, trust me, I've been through it. There's no other way that I can get a count here that doesn't violate a rule set somewhere. So the challenge here, so pivot to pivot from an algo perspective, all we've done, now you'll note here, the 100 is going to be right close to the 1618. So if I just look at this and go, okay, well, if I go length of 1 from my 2, look what we've just done. One more reason why we're topping right here. We just looked at it and saw that you're hitting the 618 of the larger swings coming down. Well, you've gone right into the hot box where you would anticipate the third. I mean, just technically perfect. In green here, right? So I've got a little divergence here as I've gone up. Now I've got a little divergence here. So I'm right into where you would anticipate the third. Right now, that looks like a 5 wave down into an A wave. Looks like a B. So I want to see it come down just so I can get more clarity here on where we are. So not that I'm often one to be looking for Bitcoin to be going down. I wouldn't mind this C wave here so I can get a better handle on where we are. Right now, that's really tough. So just coming back to this, just to be thorough. Right, if I take this off and you go, okay, well, wait a minute. If that's your 1 and that's your 2, Sam, if you're telling me that we've got a leading diagonal here, as funky as that is, then what does that mean? Well, I have to pull from the low of the start of it, that's our V bottom, to the 1 high. Right, if that's my 1 high, well, where are we now? Right, well, that would mean the 2, if I've got this right. Right? And feel free to argue with me if you can find a different count. I'd like to see it. 1, 2. Well, it's technical. We hit the 23.6 right to the tick, but that's very, very shallow for a second wave. Very low percentage, but there it is staring you in the face. So the interesting thing is that there's confluence here because we get this on top of it. Right? So we have the 23 and we have the 618 from this swing. So maybe we come back and recount this whole thing. I could not get this to complete as a 1 here. I want to. I can't get it to work. If you can get it to work, send it to me. 1, 2, up we go for the 3. Right now, you could really make the case that, well, does it matter now? Does this matter now? Well, if this plays out, it won't. We Elliott academics can go back and come up with a count there that works. What I can see here is, for whatever reason, from this pivot, I've got a 1, 2. And by the way, that pivot was also technical. If I recall, if I look back here and look at this, right into the golden zone. Right, so technical, right? Exactly what you'd expect in Bitcoin. Now, can we get this thing to come down and give us a nice 3-wave C? It sure looks like it's setting up to do that. Then we can say, but as I showed you before, is that enough? Is there enough meat in that trade to take it? That's your call. But it sure looks to me like what we've got here, and remember, I'm down on a 15-minute, right? You decide whether or not you want to trade there. But that sure looks to me like what's setting up there. Can I get a nice little ABC to come down here to give me confidence that I'm corrective? Now, keep in mind, it's just possibility, because if we do this and we don't go impulsive and we come down here, then you got to rethink that, because now I got a 5 coming down. Right now, I want to see this, looking for that. Then I get more confident in the whole count. Tricky, right? Who said this was going to be easy? Not me. All right, guys, I ran long there today. I'll stop it there.